I'm Bob Brill. He's Erik Kramer. Welcome to Kramer and Brill, a fantasy football podcast, and now a video cast, too. You can hear the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, radio.com, and wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, and wherever. And now you can also see the video cast on YouTube by going to my Bob Brill YouTube channel or by finding the links for all of this at kramerandbrill.com. That's the easiest way, kramerandbrill.com. So let the fantasy playoffs begin. Not in every league. For some of you, the playoffs begin next week, but for most leagues, you are starting your playoff run. Each week, we'll select a fan, too, who writes in to ask Erik a fantasy football-related question. We bring that fan onto the video cast to ask the question directly. And you can be that fan by simply emailing us at brillpro@gmail.com. That's brillpro@gmail.com. You can see it right there on the bottom of your screen. Right now, let's see how we did for you. How did we do for you? On the quarterback side, you liked Derek Carr, 381, 3 touchdowns. He was solid. And you liked Tannehill, who you really like going in, and he was 389 and 3 touchdowns. Goff and Taysom Hill were recommends for us, and they were solid, as was Mayfield. Kyler Murray did pass for 3 scores, but only 15 yards rushing. Now, I liked Watson, who had 351, but only 1 score, and that was rushing. On the running back side, Dalvin Cook had 120. It was good. We love James Robinson, 78 and a touch, along with Jonathan Taylor with 91. Ty Johnson was a surprise, 104 and 22 carries and a score. We also like Cam Akers, his 72 and a score. He also had a 61-yard run. We really like Gallman of the Giants at his 135, despite not getting into the end zone, was again solid. Wideouts we liked were Corey Davis. You really liked him the last few weeks, 11, 182 and a score. Justin Jefferson, 121 on 9 catches. On the tight end side, Waller had a career day, 13, 200, and a pair of touchdowns. Hawkinson had 7 for 84 as well. So trending up this week, Colt McCoy, Wayne Gallman, Jalen Hurts, Taysom Hill, Cam Akers, Jonathan Taylor, Ty Johnson, Justin Jefferson, and Darren Waller. Trending down, Kyler Murray, Carson Wentz, Mitch Trubisky, Zach Ertz, and I can mention that Carson Wentz had a minus 0.2 in a league that I was playing in. So that's kind of how far he's fallen. So your thoughts on this week?
Well, I guess I have to start in with the Giants and Colt McCoy over the Seahawks and Russell Wilson. What in the heck happened? I would add, because of that, I would add Wilson to the trending down list, because the past few weeks he's been not going in the right direction. And I think part of that is they don't have a team around him. Offensive line is horrible. Defense is top to bottom is not playing well. One thing that jumped out at me as well is Taysom Hill, who we thought, had that, he exploded on the scene stepping in game 1 for Drew Brees, but then kind of had an off week. And then really, I think, hit a stride this past as a passer, and then added another 80-something yards on the ground. So to me, he's becoming quickly a top dual threat type quarterback. And the Saints keep winning. The Bears, I think were very overpriced when they were 5-1. I didn't think they were that good. And now they've lost 6 in a row and kind of have proved that. The Browns thumping the Titans, I think that was everybody's kind of game of the week, but then it was over by halftime. And did not see that happening either. Mayfield, again, was solid, even though he didn't put up great numbers. It's almost like the better he plays, the more average his numbers look, which is fine because they're winning. And I think you were right with the Vikings and Justin Jefferson. I thought, Thielen was still overall the more productive receiver, even though Jefferson had gotten hot lately. But I think it proved that, you were right. He did have a better game. But I think they're both very valuable options. Thielen also had a touchdown, and I think he was over 80 yards receiving as well. And then I think, like you had mentioned, Carr played well. I thought if the Jets were going to win a game, and they looked like they had it until they basically snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. And in the process of Carr throwing the game-winning touchdown, Greg Williams, who obviously everybody knows was the one and only key to the Jets' problems this year, gets fired. Doesn't make any sense to me, but I think everyone saw at least something coming before Adam Gase himself gets fired. But and I think the Colts, beat a tumbling Texas team, and T.Y. Hilton exploded on having his best game of the year. most productive anyway. And then the Rams, went easily over the Cardinals. So again, Goff, Woods, Cup, all terrific, production there. And I think, this has been coming in Philadelphia, obviously, pretty much at least the latter half of the year. Jalen Hurts finally steps in and I think gives them, I think we're going to see him play this week and probably start. And I think he really gives them kind of what Carson Wentz originally gave them, which was an outstanding dual threat quarterback. And I think Jalen's just fresh enough on the scene where I think he's got enough optimism, and certainly his ability to play and throw and run is kind of on display now. So I think that's kind of it for me. And I hate to bring this up, but obviously the Steelers losing, I didn't see that coming, and I know you didn't. But, maybe they weren't quite as good as the 11-0 record suggested to begin with. And I think, like Mike Tomlin has now said after the loss, hey, this whole journey, this season is a journey, which, for the most part, does include a loss or two for at least every team. And so he's like, hey, now we're going to find out how we roll responding from a loss.
Going into that game, I thought that if anybody had the chance to beat the Steelers, it was going to be Washington. And that was because the way Washington was playing and the way the Steelers were playing. The Steelers, over the course of many years, what I've seen, have a tendency to play down to the competition. And the Washington Football Club were on a rise. And they lost Antonio Gibson in the first quarter. Went down with an injury. So, and Alex Smith is the story of the year, I think. I think at first it was Ben Roethlisberger.
I agree with you. And it was interesting how it was kind of the commentators, I believe, talked about how you've got really potentially the two comeback players of the year playing against each other. And I think Alex Smith rose to the occasion, and somehow the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger really didn't. And
I think the offense is just unimaginative. It's like early in the season, they were doing jet sweeps and all kinds of stuff. And now it's like, okay, at one point, Juju Smith-Schuster, I was watching the stats because he's on my team. He had 3 catches for 3 yards.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like what it's been. And they're dropping a lot of passes too. So,
well, you're right. They dropped a bunch of passes, but I think the one thing that stood out to me in watching them at this time of the year, especially, you've got to be able to run the football and kind of impose your will to run the football. And they just can't. If you look at all the 3rd down and shorts, all the 4th and shorts, there wasn't a successful run in there. And that's why you saw some of the passes that were short to guys like Smith-Schuster is they don't have a running game. Yeah. So they got to get a first down somehow. Exactly. And Ben's not the dual threat guy. So they're just going to drop back, empty backfield set, and try to throw for a 3rd and a 4th and 1, which is kind of crazy.
Well, now we come to our regular feature, Ask the Quarterback. And this week we have a regular fan who emailed us with a question, but couldn't be here in person, so to speak. He writes, I just squeaked into the final spot in the playoffs, and I'm not sure who to start at quarterback. It's either Ben Roethlisberger, who's been my regular quarterback, and I like to come to the dance of the girl that brought me there all year. He's been solid, and I have 2 of the top 3 Steeler receivers giving me a double hit. However, I also have Deshaun Watson, who's been solid lately, but was a little off last week in fantasy points. So if it wasn't Ben, I would start Watson, but he's also been inconsistent. The Steelers play a difficult Buffalo team, while the Texans are facing your Chicago Bears. My third choice is Taysom Hill, who had a really good week and is playing in Philadelphia. So who do I start? Signed, a confused Steeler fan in SoCal.
Well, confused. I would say, my first thought is that, go with the girl actually you brought to the dance in Ben Roethlisberger, and that despite how ugly she just looked last night. And because you've got, again, 2 of the better receivers, not just on the Steelers, but in the league. And so I think that's kind of, even though it's very tempting because the Steelers, to me, just looked horrible, not just to me, to a nation last night. And they don't look like they're moving in the right direction. And they can't run the ball, not effectively anyway, and which is going to inhibit their down the field throws coming out of play action. And really, it's just Roethlisberger in an empty backfield set throwing the ball around the yard. And sometimes he's successful doing it. I mean, the numbers weren't bad last night. He still threw for over 300 yards. I think he had a touchdown. But, you're not seeing the production out of this offense that we all saw in the earlier part of the year. So the other play I don't think is Watson. The other consideration I would think would be Taysom Hill, in that he's now becoming, he's obviously going to rush for, he's going to become a legit rusher. He is a legitimate rusher every single game. And he's now, I think, developing into a solid passer, which he proved last week. So I think that would be maybe the one guy I might replace in my lineup with Roethlisberger would be Taysom Hill, if I had the choice.
Well, here's some of the stats. Ben has guided the team to a 6-3 record. Watson 1-2. Ben has scored 183 fantasy points in the last 5 games. Watson 174, so that's pretty much a wash. Watson plays against the Bears, and the Bears' defense has only scored 33 points in the last 5 games, while Buffalo's defense has scored 61, and Ben faces the Bills. And Taysom Hill's playing against Philadelphia. So matching up against those defenses with Roethlisberger against the Bills,
right?
Watson against the Bears, and Hill against the Eagles. How does that fit into the mix?
Well, that might be the tipping point for me, because I think we saw the Bills were dominating on defense and had a dominating offense. Whereas, the Bears, it's kind of a toss-up at this point defensively. They could rise up and snuff you out. But then again, they could also do what they've done lately, and that's they got destroyed by Green Bay recently. And then you've got Taysom Hill, who's really on the rise, playing against the Eagles defense, which is not on the rise. So again, that might be my tipping point, is that I might go with Taysom Hill as opposed to Roethlisberger, just having it come down to the defenses they're both going to be playing, the kind of top tier dual threat ability that Taysom Hill has, playing against a sad defense and a team right now that's in flux, whereas you got Roethlisberger, who looks to be on a team himself that's in flux.
Well,
sorry about that if that confused you even more.
Well, it's funny, because I was thinking the same thing of recommending to this fan that Taysom Hill may be the way to go. So, we'll have to see what happens. Maybe he'll write back next week and tell us how his team did in the first round.
At least with an update, right? Of what
Remember, if you'd like to ask the quarterback, just email me at brillpro@gmail.com. And if we select you, we'll be in touch to bring you on the show next week. And the email is right there on the bottom of your screen, brillpro@gmail.com. So let's get to the games. Patriots and Rams. Patriots defense, high-powered this last week, poses a challenge for Goff and the Rams, but it's the only thing I like about New England. Cam Newton is still not high on my list, although 3 touchdowns is interesting to contemplate. 2 of the rushing. I definitely am sold on Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson here.
And okay, so let's, to me, throw out the Patriots versus the Chargers. I think that was just, it's not that I don't believe in the Chargers, I do, but I think the Patriots dominating them in the way they did defensively, I don't think that's going to happen, certainly not to the Rams. This is an offense that's going in and has been trending in a great direction all year long. Period. I think you got Goff, Woods, and Cooper Kupp all together are a fantastic threesome. You got a great running game, although I wouldn't possibly, unless I had a better option, or unless I didn't have a better option, I'm not going to take either of those running backs as my starter, because you don't know which guy is going to be the guy that week. True. And I think that the Patriots, there's really nobody offensively there I would play. Obviously, Cam Newton had a better game than what he's shown probably the last, 4 or 5 weeks. But I'm not confident in any offensive play the Patriots have. I think mainly because of Cam and him being so inconsistent.
Vikings and Buccaneers. Cousins is up and down against Tampa. I'm sitting him. Got to play Cook, though, and Jefferson is the guy I like here at wideout. Tampa coming off a bye, but I like Gronk again. And Ronald Jones is a decent flex play, but really that's about it.
Yeah, and I agree with you on Cousins. He's really been kind of up and down this season at times. This last game, he looked good, very good at times. But I agree with you, as I said before, with Jefferson. But if I had Thielen and didn't have Jefferson, I would start Thielen here. I think the Buccaneers defense has at times been spectacular, and at other times, you don't know what you're getting there either. So I think looking at the Buccaneer defense, the one guy I might add onto that list that you didn't was Tom Brady. And, he's, to me, shown enough consistency throughout the years, excluding game one, where, he's a legitimate starting quarterback to me now.
Cardinals and Giants, I think Murray is risky here, so he's a sit for me. But I do like Kenny and Drake to pick it up, as well as Wayne Gallman on the Giants. Gallman right now, I think, is a weekly start for me, especially now that the Giants are seriously looking at a possible playoff run. And I think he's in for a good run.
And I'd agree with you. And I'd say even though the Giants defense is playing well, Kyler Murray is still one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the NFL. And he did have 3 touchdowns last week, even though his yards weren't up passing wise. He's still a threat. And that's the numbers when you're talking about fantasy football. I think he's a good bet this week. Hopkins also, DeAndre, meaning he would be also a start for me. He's always going to be their leading receiver. And the Giants, with Colt McCoy quarterback, there's really nobody there other than who you mentioned as far as Wayne Gallman to start on the Giants offense.
Chiefs and Dolphins, Chiefs, all the usual suspects. And for me, Jason Sanders, the kicker here for the Dolphins, is a really solid pickup. He's been averaging 12, 15 points a game.
And I'll flip over to the Dolphins and just say I'd start Tua. He had it coming off at nearly 300 yards combined last week, along with a touchdown. Myles Gaskins, both a threat out of the backfield running the ball and as a receiver. And then I also add Gesicki, because at tight end, guy's got great hands. He's a definite red zone threat every week, and he's going to be a points getter as well.
Titans and Jaguars, Derrick Henry, of course, Tannehill, Brown, now Corey Davis. I'm going to go with him this time out. He's proven himself to me over the last few weeks. And James Robinson on the Jags, you can't say much more about him.
Wait a minute, not Mike Glennon, even though he went to NC State, you don't recognize him? Yeah, I kind of top to bottom, I would agree with you there. And the one guy that that I didn't hear you talk about is Jonnu Smith, and that's the guy that I think is established himself so far this year as somebody that Tannehill has a chemistry with, and also is a legitimate red zone threat.
Yeah, he was out last week, though, with an injury. That's why I didn't include him. I'm not sure about where he sits this coming week. So that's another guy. You got to make sure you do check the injury wires. We always encourage you to do that because, when you're playing your fantasy game, you never know what's going to happen. Cowboys at Bengals. Cowboys, wow. Who outside of Amari Cooper? Zeke, if you want to take the chance. Now, Zeke is playing before we record or after we recorded this, so we don't know what happened on Tuesday. But the boys are playing out the string, so I'm not sure he's a start. Bengals, I do like Tyler Boyd, but nobody else.
I'd add T. Higgins to the Bengals only because he's been a consistent producer and has many good games against some excellent defenses, including the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he had 115 yards and a touchdown. So I think the Cowboys aren't that defensively, and I think for that reason, the Bengals, even though they're not playing Joe Burrow anymore, quarterback is the injury, I think T. Higgins still comes alive in the receiving game.
Texans at the Bears. Now, the Bears haven't looked good, but Montgomery did step it up last week. Got to think Allen Robinson's worth a play. I would take the chance on Montgomery. Texans, Kiki Kute stepped it up after languishing in Never Never Land. I haven't heard his name since last year. He's a play, as is Watson, and I'm liking Hansen now that Fuller's gone for violating the substance abuse policy, so he's out.
Yeah, I like pretty much how you've gone through this, and I think Montgomery, to me anyway, look at the way he's been running, not just last week, but really all season long. This guy runs with a lot of passion and tenacity, and that's why he had the 2 touchdowns last week. And then he's also emerging somewhat in the passing game. I think he had 4 catches for nearly 40 yards. And so I think of all the Bear players, along with Robinson, really it's just those 2. I think Robinson's a play for me, but then so is Montgomery, because he's the one guy that really plays with a fire, and I don't care. And I know he doesn't care what the Bears' record is.
Broncos at Panthers, not much to like on the Broncos, but Patrick is at least a possible flex. He had like 20 points last week after coming off a week when they didn't really have a quarterback. Carolina coming off a bye, might be worth Curtis Samuels and Bridgewater more as an injury wire watch this week.
Yeah, and obviously McCaffrey's out now, and Bridgewater also. Even though he practiced last week, he's still kind of nursing an injury, a knee injury. But I like Samuels as well too. I think he does damage in both the running game and the passing game, and is makes a lot of yards after the catch. He's just a dominating downfield player.
Jets at Seahawks. Jets, come on, but Ty Johnson is possible, as is Jamison Crowder. As long as the Jets don't need to win, performances may be solid as guys look to make impressions for next year. Got to believe with the reduced salary cap, some of the better players here are going to be cap casualties. So some of these guys may be playing a little extra harder. And I'm thinking here that might, it's just when you're in a salary year, seems to make a difference. Your play on the field, maybe. So we'll see.
Well, I like you. I think, I'll say this. On the other hand, regarding the Jets, now that they've jettisoned their real problem, which all along everybody knows was Greg Williams, right? Maybe now they'll start playing, together as a team. I'm joking, but I just think that, the Seahawks don't play defense. And for that reason, you got guys like you just mentioned, Sam Darnold, maybe playing for a contract next year.
Yeah.
Depending on who they draft, if they get the first overall pick, it might be the guy at Clemson, the quarterback. So the fact that the Seahawks don't play defense, I think, gives Darnold, who accounted for 3 touchdowns himself last week, a chance to show up. And I think, like you, Jamison Crowder, to me, offensively, has been their most consistent player. He's an excellent slot receiver who makes yards after the catch. He poses issues for the defense that tries to shut him down, which really no defense has this year.
Colts at Raiders. I like Taylor. I like Hines. I like Pittman on the Raiders. Carr had a good week, so bench him this week. Ruggs, Waller, and Booker are plays here because the running back situation, it seems like Booker now has taken that thing over. So,
well, and to flip over to the Colts, I mean, Phillip Rivers, who really kind of in the beginning when he started to throw too much and they were losing, switched and then just became more of a game manager. Well, now he's back to protecting the ball. In these last 4 games, he's been very productive and has protected the ball at the same time. So, you look at the last game he played against Houston, 285 yards and a couple touchdowns. As we mentioned before, T.Y. Hilton coming off a very good game. And this game, you got 2 good teams. This game probably has some playoff implications to it. And so I think the Colts here, this is where they established, which way they're going. Right now they won, I think, 3 out of the last 4. To keep it going, they got to beat a good Raiders team.
Washington at the 49ers, you got to like Alex Smith. Keep an eye on Antonio Gibson, who was hurt in the first quarter of the Steeler game, whether he's going to play tomorrow or not. Just check the injury wires. 49ers, I like Mullins. I think he's come along pretty good. I'm not sure there's much I can really recommend on the rest of that team, though.
And I agree with you. Alex Smith, what a great story he is. He went from maybe never playing again, maybe never walking, maybe having his leg amputated, to now playing not just on the field and handing off, but like now the last week or 2 playing very well. And he's, to me, the comeback story of the year. And then you got Logan Thomas at tight end, who was very productive. And now he's had a couple of touchdowns these past couple of weeks, 1 in each game. And now he's got a very viable quarterback throwing him the ball in Alex Smith. And I think that makes, that puts him, in addition to McLaurin, into the viable category in terms of Washington offensive players. The 49ers, they've got to get Deebo Samuel involved. Every time he touches the ball, he's productive. Get him the ball then. I mean, he's basically a running back that plays receiver. That's what they mentioned, in the game last night, and which makes him dangerous after the catch.
Alex Smith, I believe, had 18 surgeries on his legs.
Something like that. A lot.
Yeah. Saints at Eagles. Saints, you got to go for Thomas, Hill, and Kamara here. Eagles, don't even look.
Well, I would, as far as Taysom Hill goes, we talked about earlier how he's very intriguing. I mean, now he's really stepping up as a passer. He's obviously knows what he's doing with the ball in his hands running down the field. And, he combined for over 300 yards between rushing and passing last game, threw for a couple touchdowns against the Falcons. And now he's facing an Eagles defense that we've talked about earlier. They just gave up 30 points to Green Bay. And for Michael Thomas, who exploded against the Falcons, to me, he's a play. And then now don't forget about Jared Cook, because in the red zone, that guy comes up big too.
Falcons and Chargers, Ridley and Jones, but keep an eye on Jones as far as injury is concerned. And it looks like Gurley now is back and at least a flex play. And of course, Matt Ryan's solid.
Well, and I'll switch over to Chargers for three guys who I thought would show up but didn't against the Patriots. That doesn't mean I'd be scared off playing them next week, or this coming week, and that's Herbert, Eckler, and Keenan Allen. If I had them, they'd be in my lineup. And the Falcons defensively are just, they other than the one game they played well against the Raiders, really haven't for the most part this year.
Packers at Lions. Packers, anyone is playable here. And on the Lions, it's Peterson, Hawkinson, Stafford. Got to really emphasize Peterson. He's just really come alive, more than I certainly expected this year.
Well, I agree, and it showed up to me, a few weeks ago when DeAndre Swift went down, and Peterson was the guy, especially in the red zone, which again he was last week. And this is a team, rightfully so, I think, has a lot of confidence in him. And again, T.J. Hawkinson is, to me, one of the better tight ends in the league. And of course, Stafford's playing well right now and has all year. And so I think that threesome that you just mentioned is a good play as well.
Steelers and Bills, we did a lot on the Steelers already, but I also want to throw in the fact that if you have Boswell as your kicker, you may want to pick up somebody else because Boswell was nursing an injury last week. They brought in a kicker off the waiver wire. He played, kicked a field goal, but they didn't go for a field goal that would have been like a 46-yarder late in the game that maybe they would have gone for. So I would definitely, if you have Boswell, I would not. I would replace him. And as far as the Bills go, Josh Allen's just, unstoppable, and Diggs is just, incredible. And they're just, and Gabriel Davis, I guess it is, had a good week the week before too.
Yeah, and I'll talk about Josh Allen here a little bit, just breaking down quarterback-wise what he does that stood out to me and has really been sort of moving in this direction, but especially lately. When you watch him in that last game, the way he moves around with his feet and eyes together, always in rhythm, always in sync, always moving into the throw, able to look off defenders and hit receivers right behind the guy he looked off. Those are the type of things that work week after week after week. Doesn't matter what defense you're playing, he's getting great protection. To me, he's probably the best young quarterback that's at least been around for a couple of years now. He's got everything going for him. In addition to great players around him that they've added to, he's got a great play caller in Brian Dable, who very imaginative in his play calling, in the details of the way the routes are run by the receivers and the way the techniques they use to beat man coverage. For instance, Stephon Diggs last night against press coverage ran a little short slant route that turned into a slant, and then a short little corner route, which amounted to about a 6-7 yard throw. But the announcer was saying, hey, you can't play zone. And now look, you can't play man against them because they've got the techniques to beat everything.
Ravens and Browns, now this is a key division matchup with two teams with possible playoff implications. So everybody's going to be up for this one. You got to like Landry. He seems to have come back, and Mayfield as well as Chubb and Hunt. Now, Edwards for Baltimore. And then, to be honest with you, you really have to keep an eye on the COVID wire because you never know what's going on with the Ravens. They've just had that problem all year. And definitely the kicker, Justin Tucker, if he's available, you'll want to pick him up. He's been so consistent, long and short. And when you're in the fantasy playoffs, kicker can make the difference.
Interesting here how we're talking about the Browns deep into the season with playoff implications in a game that last week they destroyed the Titans, and now here they are now with another team in the Ravens that traditionally have been good at this time of year, but all of a sudden, where are they? So I would almost give, if I was an odds maker here, the Browns are at home. I know the crowd isn't a factor this year's season, but I think the Browns are playing as well right now as any team that I would look at and have been analyzing. So, again, I think the formula they have is a good, consistent, solid running game that the passing game supports, not vice versa. And I think that's their winning combination. They play excellent defense. The Ravens are going to have to come up with a consistent way to move the ball and score points, something they haven't really done in a while.
That brings up an interesting point. When you were playing, you didn't have the situation where you didn't have fans. But you played on a home field turf. and now without fans, home field advantage, does it make that much difference to your play when the conditions of the field you're playing on, that you maybe play on 8 times a year as opposed to playing once or maybe twice, well, actually once in somebody else's field?
Yeah, interesting. Well, like you said, I have never played a game before where there was restrictions on fans even being in attendance. But I think the field itself, I don't know that it makes all that big of a difference. And you look at the Ravens; they don't have to travel that far to go to Cleveland, so there's no time change difference. I think really this time of year, it's really about who has built the better foundation for their team to operate on. Just the fundamental basics of what they do. You're going to adjust week to week based on what you see you can exploit or what you have to protect against with the other team. Then that goes into the game plan. And it's really just a matter of how well you execute it. And for me right now, the Browns are executing as well as anybody.
And there you have it. Kramer and Brill, a fantasy football podcast, now a video cast as well. You can hear the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, radio.com, and wherever you get your podcasts, Apple and iTunes. And now you can also see the video cast on YouTube by going to my Bob Brill YouTube channel or by finding links for all of this at kramerandbrill.com. That's the easiest way. And don't forget LinkedIn. We do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn for you. We have a special promotion running there right now. And don't forget about Ask the Quarterback. Each week, we select a fan who writes in to ask Erik a fantasy football related question. We bring the fan onto the video podcast to ask the question directly. You can be that fan by simply emailing us at brillpro@gmail.com, right at the bottom of your screen, brillpro@gmail.com. For my friend and colleague, Erik Kramer, I'm Bob Brill. We'll see you next time.